Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Sharon Skembry and I'm here today to talk to you about strategic marketing. We're working from a Farrell and Hartline text. Today we're looking at Chapter 5, and Chapter 5 is all about customers, segmentation and target marketing. Right, so we'll share the screen here and we'll get going. All right, let's go. Okay. So in this chapter, we're looking at buyer behavior in consumer markets, as well as business markets. Then we'll look at the concept of market segmentation and specific segments within the marketplace, and using that segmentation strategy to identify our target markets. All right, so what are we talking about? Segmentation and target marketing. We're talking about considering markets as individuals, as institutions, or a group of people. And these markets have similar needs that can be met by a specific offering. So the aim of segmentation and target marketing is to identify specific customer needs and design a marketing program to satisfy those needs. So firms must comprehensively, ideally, organizations would understand current and potential customers. So ideally, organizations would know what motivates their customers, how their customers behave, and what their customers' needs and wants are. So marketers, astute marketers, must comprehend and define consumer needs, because that's how they do design and deliver an effective marketing program and achieve success. Right, now buyer behavior in consumer markets. We recognize that consumers are often irrational and unpredictable. Aren't we all, right? And consumers as buyers progress through 5 stages in the decision-making process to buy a product or a service. So there's issues in the buying process that consumers do not always follow these 5 steps that are recognized in the research, and they can be swayed, for example, by brand loyalty. The buying process for consumers involves parallel decisions, including what to buy and where to buy. So here's the 5 steps in the consumer buying process. First of all, they recognize the need. So, you know, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need to get home, right? Then there's an information search. If you're hungry or thirsty, maybe your information search is a memory search, an internal search. But if you're the need recognition that you've identified is that you need a new place to live, you want to buy a house, then maybe your information search will be more involved and far more comprehensive. So when the decision that the consumer is making is an everyday routine decision, the evaluation of alternatives might be quite narrow. And when the decision is more high involved, such as buying a house or maybe a high-tech product, then maybe there'll be a more comprehensive consideration of the alternatives. Once we recognize the alternatives and evaluate the alternatives, then we make the purchase decision. And then after the purchase decision, there may well be an evaluative process after that. Right, so when when marketers are considering the consumer buying process, we need to recognize the difference between a need, a want, and demand, right? So a need is when the consumer's existing level of satisfaction and the desired level of satisfaction are not the same. So it can be based on internal stimuli or external stimuli. Whereas a want is about the consumer's desire for a specific product that will satisfy the need. And then demand, we're talking about when a consumer's ability and willingness to purchase the product backs up the want for that product. Okay. Right, here's some more information about the information search process. So an information search can be a passive search. It can be an active search. As I mentioned, internal memory might be used as the source of information, or maybe the sources of information used are external and more comprehensive, including online searching, maybe talking to the salespeople, maybe looking at specific advertising. So the information search can involve a varying amount of time and effort and even expense, depending on the degree of risk involved with the purchase, the amount of expertise with the product category that the consumer has, and the cost, the risk involved with the purchase. The time, sorry, we said risk at the top there. Right, so yes, the degree of risk can mean a variation in the amount of time and effort, but also the cost of the search. So searching takes time and money in itself. So that may well be the varying factor for how much information search is undertaken or not. Now, when we're an internal search, a memory used as the information search, might pull up for a consumer, it might pull up an evoked set. An evoked set is about the potential brands or products that the consumer is aware of. So when consumers are engaged in information search, if they're going to their memory banks as the information source, then maybe only a small number of brands might come to mind. If the search is more comprehensive, then they may well go through that search process before they arrive, the consumer, arrive at their evoked set. So the evoked set is then taken to the evaluation stage, and when consumers are evaluating alternatives, they're evaluating products as bundles of product features. Each product feature, each product attribute has a different level of importance. And so there might be a priority put on certain choice criteria, and this prioritization of criteria may well change during the evaluation process. Now, important considerations for the marketers here is that the products or the brands must be in the evoked set for the consumer to consider that as an option, as an alternative. And marketers need to have a good understanding of what the consumer's choice criteria are, because the marketing programs must be designed to influence that choice criteria and ensure that the consumer is aware of the brand and what that brand image is. During the purchase decision process, unforeseen circumstances might interfere with the consumer's decision to buy a product, and marketers have to try and overcome these factors. And they do this by reducing the risk of the purchase, making the purchase process user-friendly. Finding creative solutions to unexpected problems is another way that marketers can overcome these issues, these unexpected issues. Okay. Other key issues in the purchase decision process or at the purchase stage is whether or not the product is available, right? So maybe the consumer has decided to buy a certain brand and they go to a certain store to buy the certain brand, and then that store doesn't have that brand. Or maybe the supermarket shelf on that day is missing that particular product. So availability is where the sale is lost. And then possession utility, which is about the use value in possessing the product. After the purchase is made, we need to understand that there's a connection between the buying process and the long-term customer relationships. So we as astute marketers can recognize that there's 4 possible outcomes in this post-purchase evaluation. Hopefully the consumers are delighted, but maybe they're satisfied. Unfortunately, sometimes they're dissatisfied, and even further into the downward slide is what's recognized as cognitive dissonance. And this is where the consumer goes into a doubt-filled state of mind about whether or not they've made a good purchase. So there is a high likelihood of experiencing dissatisfaction, or this concept known as cognitive dissonance, when the dollar value of the purchase increases, or when opportunity costs of the rejected alternatives are high, or when the purchase decision is involving emotions. Sentimentality, for example. Nostalgia, for example. Okay, so here's some factors that affect the consumer buying process. The decision-making complexity. This is the primary reason for variations in the buying process. So highly technical or highly complex products are going to influence the consumer buying process, make the information search longer, make the evaluation process more involved. Maybe even the purchase process is more difficult and acts as a deterrent for actually purchasing the product. Individual influences such as demographics, right? So older people are known to be more conservative. Also individual influences such as attitudes, interests and opinions, and lifestyles in general. Okay, social influences such as culture and subcultures, reference groups, right? So what your friends say, what opinion leaders say, this will affect the consumer buying process. And translate that to social media, and it's what the influencers say. Right, situational influences, the amount of time and effort devoted to the purchase task. And common situational influences can be physical and spatial influences, such as retail atmospherics, the music playing, the lighting, the aromas in the retail environment. Also social and interpersonal influences, such as whether the salesperson is very persuasive or not, or very knowledgeable about the complex technical product that you're looking to buy. And then there's temporal influences, and what we're talking about here is whether or not the consumer is in a rush, for example. Other situational influences include the purchase task or the purchase usage. So like if you're purchasing the product for a special occasion, such as a wedding or a graduation, maybe you're more inclined to spend more money, or maybe you're more inclined to evaluate more precisely, be more discerning in your purchase. And consumer dispositional influences, such as how stressed you are or not, or whether the 2-year-old toddler you've got in tow is throwing a tantrum or not. All right, now let's switch our discussion from the consumer markets to the business markets. Right, so here I'm talking about business markets. We're talking about organizations as the customers. And there's 4 types of business markets according to Farrell and Hartline, 2017. We can talk about commercial markets, reseller markets, government markets, and institutional markets. And there's unique characteristics of business markets. So just like in the consumer market, the consumer might turn to their friends and family or maybe social media influencers to help them make a decision. In an industrial market, in the business markets, it's not just one person that makes the decision. They will have what's called a buying center. And this buying center includes representatives from various functions in the organization. So we might have the accountant who's in the buying center. We might have the operations manager in the buying center. We might have the warehouse manager in the buying center. We might have the engineer in the buying center, right? So who are the relevant people that need to come together to make this buying decision? And this is especially important to make sure that the right people are included in that buying center, especially when the purchase is a very expensive purchase. Right. In business markets, there are hard and soft costs that need to be included, so direct and indirect costs. There is okay. I can't say that today. Reciprocity. Sorry, that word is not rolling off my tongue today. Reciprocity. I'm trying to say it wrong. Reciprocity, right? So that means that an organization in a business market is going to purchase this product from this particular vendor because they know that this particular vendor has other products that they might want to purchase, and so maybe they can get a bulk deal, or maybe that particular vendor has something that they too can purchase from the organization that is buying in this instance, right? So in other words, you help me and I'll help you. Reciprocity. There we go. All right. Mutual dependence is another unique characteristic of business markets. And with mutual dependence, we're talking about that organizations will depend on one another. Okay, now we said in the consumer buying process there was 5 steps. Well, similarly, there's a number of steps in the business buying process. It's just more involved. It's more involved because a lot of times there's higher risk, there's higher complexity, there's more people involved. Okay, so we start with the problem recognition. Then we're going to take a step to develop product specifications. From there, we're going to identify who are the potential vendors that we can buy our needed product from, right? Then we're going to put out a call for bids, right? So we're going to solicit proposals. We're going to call for bids. And there's a formal process to go through to be one of the organizations that are making a bid. From the organizations that have made the bid, we might narrow the selection of potential vendors. From there, the organization is going to look at the order processing and review the vendor performance. Now, there's factors influencing this business buying process that include environmental conditions, such as increased uncertainty, risk, complexity associated with the purchase. Organizational factors that are internal or maybe external can influence this buying process. Individual factors, right? So specific buying situations and the importance of specific organizational goals. All right, so now we're talking about the concept of segmentation. And this concept of segmentation applies to consumer markets, just like it applies to business markets, right? So this concept of segmentation is about taking the whole market, and then we're going to divide this total market into groups that have similar needs and wants, right? So we refer to that as homogeneous segments, right? So these groups of people, if we're in the consumer market, or groups of organizations, if we're in the business markets, are homogeneous segments within the total market, right? So we take the total market and then we look at specific segments in that total market. It involves a fundamental decision of whether to segment or not, right? Maybe it's a better idea just to look at the total market. But it's a more precise understanding of the total market when you look at the segments within that total market. So market segmentation is considered astute in the business climate of today, in the contemporary marketplace, because it helps the organization look for market niches. So traditional marketing is known as mass marketing, and this involves no segmentation. So mass marketing is about an undifferentiated approach, right? It doesn't matter what the consumer market is. We, the marketers, are going to use the same approach for everybody. Okay, so it's like a shotgun approach. Just splatter it out there and see what sticks. So this mass marketing approach works best when the needs of the entire market are similar. When does that happen? I don't know. Results in efficient production and lower marketing costs. All right, so when we are taking a mass marketing approach, we are doing what Henry Ford did in 1910 when the T model Ford was produced, and he said, you can have any color you like as long as it's black, right? So Henry Ford, known as the father of the assembly line, efficient production was what he engaged in, and there was only one T model to market, and it was put on offer for the entire total market. So efficient production and lower marketing costs and an undifferentiated strategy, right? One product for everybody. There's no fully standardized. There's no adaptation to specific segment needs. But this is risky because it makes the organization vulnerable to competitors. So competitors might come along and say, all right, we're recognizing that the total market here is made up of specific segments. And just like Ford does today, Ford takes a differentiated approach, right? So the Ford trucks are marketed for a specific segment of consumers. The Ford sedans are designed and marketed for a specific set of consumers. The Ford hybrid models, the Ford fuel, the smaller Ford products are marketed to specific segments of the marketplace. So this is a differentiated approach, right? So Ford today, unlike the undifferentiated strategy used by Henry Ford in 1910, with the one T model designed and delivered for the total market, Ford today uses a differentiated market approach where they divide the total market into segments where they're recognizing groups of customers have similar needs, groups of customers have homogeneous needs. And then they're developing strategies to pursue each of these various segments, right? This segment gets this product from Ford. This segment gets this Ford model, and this segment gets that Ford model, right? Because they have various varying needs. So the example I'm using of Ford in the contemporary marketplace, where Ford designs specific products to meet the needs of specific segments. This is a multi-segment approach. So they offer a variety of products that appeal to various specific segments. All right. Right. Whereas a market concentration approach is where the organization is focusing on one single market segment. And okay, maybe we use the example of Tesla there, right? So Tesla is focused on consumers who are environmentally conscious and maybe willing to pay a premium to have an electronic vehicle. So another approach to segmentation is this niche marketing approach, where the marketing is focused on one very small but very well-defined market segment. And this market segment is identified to possess specific needs. So the customers will willingly pay a higher price because the products match their needs. Maybe the Tesla example fits better here. So firms should understand and meet the needs of that target customers in order to earn a substantial share. Right, so one-to-one marketing is about creating an entire unique product for each customer. So one-to-one marketing, reverse up in time and look at the vehicles that were available prior to Henry Ford releasing that T model in 1910. Before Henry Ford implemented the assembly line as a production process to increase efficiency, every single vehicle was handmade. Every single vehicle was made specifically for that customer. So this is an example of one-to-one marketing. Now, where does that happen in the contemporary marketplace? Well, think of an architect designing the house specifically for the steeply sloping land that you've just purchased out in Colorado, right? So one-to-one marketing. In the automobile market, the Rolls-Royce is an example that is still handmade specifically to meet customers' needs. But if we introduce technology into this concept of one-to-one marketing, we end up with something that's recognized as mass customization. So this is the extension of one-to-one marketing using technology. And an example here is, I don't know why, but, you know, kitchens comes to mind as an example. So using technology, builders are able to ensure that the kitchens that they offer to their clients are customized specifically to that client's needs. So it provides unique solutions to individual customers on a mass scale. Another example is, relates to, for example, all right, where nutritional diets are designed to meet the needs of a particular consumer with certain health conditions, right? And so you might fill out a survey that identifies your age and your lifestyle and your health conditions, and therefore here's the nutritional plan for you. And this is done with built-in algorithms that enables the organization to deliver these mass customized diet plans, for example. Position marketing is about when customers choose to become part of the firm's target market. So this is where customers are already interested in the product offering and they opt in to a marketing campaign. So there's criteria for successful segmentation. Segmentation must involve being able to identify and measure the specific segment that is being considered. The segment must be substantial enough. It must be large enough. The potential in that segment must be viable and sustainable. Similarly, the segment must be accessible and the segment has to be interested. So, you know, they have to be responsive. So successful segmentation should avoid ethical, sensitive, yet legal segments. And they should also avoid segments that do not match the firm's core competence, the firm's level of knowledge and expertise. When you're identifying market segments, you want to select the most relevant characteristics to define your target market or define how you're going to segment that total market. So most variables that are used to segment the market are part of the situation analysis that's identified at the front end of the marketing plan, right? So the situation analysis and the research that's been done to conduct that situation analysis, here is where the front end of your marketing plan connects with the back end of the marketing plan, where you're identifying that the total market is made up of these specific segments, and in line with what the analysis shows at the front end, these are the segments that you are going to target. All right. Now, some organizations might have to shift their target market. Maybe the organization's goals change. Maybe their overarching strategy changes, or maybe the shift in the target market is in response to changes in specific program elements. So it's really important to understand that when you segment that total market, you're going to look at these segments and you're going to identify which segments are you going to target, right? Because probably not a good idea to target all of them, because each target is going to require considerations of what product adaptations need to be made and what communication adaptations need to be made. So in this way, the target market and the marketing program are highly interdependent, tightly connected. The front end of the marketing plan and the back end of the marketing plan. These dots need to be connected. Right, so how do you segment the consumer market? Well, here's some variables that you can use. You can look at behavioral variables such as benefits that the customer is seeking, benefits such as quality. You can look at how the consumers are using the product. Are they heavy users or are they light users? Or do they only use this product on specific occasions? These three variables are behavioral variables. You can also look at demographic variables such as gender, occupation, and education. You can also look at psychographic variables such as lifestyle, or geographic variables such as zip code. When you're segmenting business markets, look at the type of organization, look at the characteristics of the organization, consider the benefits that the organization is seeking, and look at the relationship intensity. All right, so this slide is showing us basic strategies for target market selection. When you are deciding which segments to target, you can look at targeting a single segment in the marketplace, right? So in this case, you have one product and marketing specifically designed to communicate with the single segment that you are intending to target. Another way to, another strategy in terms of target market selection is selective targeting, where you have multiple segments that you are going to target, but you're actually quite selective in which segments you're going to target, because you're going to have a product as well as a marketing program that's specifically designed to meet the needs of that specific segment, right? So the second box there, you're selectively targeting 3 different segments, but for segment 1, you have one program, one product and one marketing program to target that specific segment. For the second segment, you have a different product and a different marketing program to target that specific segment. And similarly, with the third selected segment that you want to target, you will have a different product and a specifically designed marketing program for that segment. Okay, the mass marketing approach just targets everybody. The product specialization approach, you'll have one product to target different markets. So you're specializing in the product that is provided to 3 different markets. And in the market specialization, you have 3 different products that are marketed in the same way. All right, so then we target non-customers. Understanding why customers do not buy the products is a really important step. So here we are targeting inactive customers. So how do we do that? Well, we need to understand their needs. We need to understand why they are buying the alternatives to our product. Maybe there's high switching costs involved, right? So maybe it actually costs the consumer money or time and effort to switch from one brand from a competitor's brand to our brand. And then there's lack of product awareness, that maybe the inactive customers don't actually know that our brand exists. Maybe there's assumptions that are long held by the consumer about whether or not they should be buying our product. And maybe those assumptions are accurate or not. So by doing market research to understand the customer needs of our potential customers that are inactive, our non-customers, we can seek to overcome maybe inaccurate, long-held assumptions, for example. So essentially, we want to remove obstacles to enable our inactive customers to be converted to active customers. And there you go. That's chapter 5. Thank you very much for your attention, and